We are live for a post-game edition of Gators Gameday Live. This one from my bud Davis. We talked at halftime, so we go live if for one, if it was an interesting ending. It was an interesting ending. We also talked about Florida having a lot of points and opportunities to establish a big lead in the first half and squandering them. And it ended up coming back to bite Florida. Counting to 11 was a tough. You lost this game because you couldn't count to 11, really, basically. But just initial thoughts on the game. I think it really is a really good microcosm of kind of the whole Napier tenure. You got a lot of the highs, a lot of the lows, all kind of in one game.
Hey guys, that's exactly right. I mean, you're a freaking field goal counting to 11 people from winning this game. Yeah. Like a rivalry game on the road in Knoxville at night, very tough game, and you can't get 11 players on the field for a field goal. Jesus Christ, like we knew the vibes were bad heading into the second half, and in some ways I think our defense played better in the second half than I expected, but generally this is a people are going to throw out the phrase microcosm of the Napier era, and I very much feel that there's going to be a lot of frustration around this game, and I think it's warranted. But generally, I think you can positives on defense, negatives on offense, extremely negatives on special teams, extremely negatives on situational play calling. Yeah. And I think if you look at that bracket of where we're frustrated, it's the entire Napier experience that we've had the past few years.
Yeah, to me, like I do really think this was, you kind of got all of the flavors of the Napier era tonight. You got some good play calls. Like I thought the touchdown from Lagway to DK was a really good call, and really well executed. You had some terrible calls, just situationally, like the screen in overtime. I think you hadn't really popped one of the screens in the back all game. That was kind of a tough time to call that. You'd almost pop some screens. You'd almost popped a couple on the perimeter out of receivers or when the back was outside, but out of the backfield, they had that pretty well snipped out. So to call that in overtime and just like lose more yards is really tough. And that's been the biggest gripe, right? I think a lot of people have kind of bagged on the scheme, and Mike has always been the scheme is okay, but it's the timing of play calling that is the biggest issue, and we saw that kind of rear its head tonight offensively. Like I think the perfect example of that is the 4th and 1, where yes, schematically the play makes sense, but you're also like an inch away. Why don't you just run a quarterback sneaker? There's a bunch of other ways to handle it, and it could have been that last throw by DJ Lagway could have been to take a 3-point lead on the road in Knoxville, and that would have given you a ton of momentum going forward. Come back and win a game without your starting quarterback and your starting running back, with a bunch of young guys playing pretty well down the stretch. Would have been really good momentum. But that's been, I think, a theme of this of these last few years is there never seems to be any ability to take advantage of momentum, right? So I think the big question is this it?
Yeah.
This is the last one.
I think I'm still not convinced that we make a move now. I just don't see a ton of advantage to firing Napier now and opening yourself up to that transfer portal now, versus waiting for it later and it overlapping with some other things, maybe getting a GM in. I think it's pretty clear to you you and me that Napier's not the guy, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't watch the football and enjoy it and see the schematic things that are going on in the game that are pretty interesting. I thought it was interesting to see a little bit more DJ Lagway in the second half after Mertz got hurt. You see a little bit more of his limitations and maybe why he's not playing as much, which is good to flesh that out a bit. I still think I'd like to see more snaps from him. I'm not a fire Napier now guy. I think he's got to get canned by then. Huh?
Yeah, I think there's going to be no choice but to see DJ Lagway snaps going forward. So it certainly looks like Mertz. They said I saw some, who knows, but I saw some messages looked like he, was crying on the sideline, had tears in his eyes, had like a walker type thing assisting him or crutches. So I would imagine he's done for the year. So it's going to be Lagway going forward. But yeah, I do think that's
really sad because I think Mertz has been a great Florida Gator.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's in the tough for last year.
We're on sync. So I mean, I get sad if we lose Mertz. He's been a great Florida Gator for us. He's played well. Billy Napier has clearly gotten Mertz to play above where his baseline has been. He's gotten a lot more out of him than I think his average. Mertz has played really well under Billy. There's been clear limitations of Mertz, but at the same time, Mertz has given a lot for the Florida Gators, and Florida Gator fans should not just brush him aside like he's yesterday's news. I think there's positives to seeing more Lagway going forward, but I think there's going to be negatives that come with that. He's a true freshman. There's going to be growing pains. And it's tough to have true freshman QB growing pains in a year where you've also got a outgoing, essentially lame duck head coach. That's a tough combination. And so I think it's how do you get the most out of DJ Lagway? How do you potentially try and do things like bring in a GM to line up a next head coach hire so you can keep Lagway on the roster? Those are the things I think Florida fans should be maybe focusing on. I'm less concerned about the wins losses going forward. Who cares? We're not going to play for hardware this year. Versus let's try and focus now, I think, on keeping 10 to 12 guys from this roster. Who are the 10 to 12 guys on this roster who next year with the new head coach make the most difference to build some momentum? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think Robert, that's it. The quarterback can't change a bad play. Mertz would have made it. I do think you did see where, Florida missed Mertz at times in the second half, but Lagway also kind of showed that high-level ceiling he has. Like that last throw, stepping up in the pocket and just ripping that down the middle of the field was just an absolute laser beam. So you get the highs, you get the lows, but this is a game that was lost really in the first half when you didn't take advantage of all the opportunities you had. There's a real easy path to being up 24-0, like early in the second half. Like a real easy path to it.
I think people are going to say 24-0. I think even me as a pessimist, I'm like, we should have been up 17-0. Like if Bud Davis is saying we should have been up 17-0 at the half, like we should have been up 17-0. Like let's be honest, like that was a squandered first half.
Yeah. So, and I would imagine this will be. Yeah, I don't like you said. Like in terms of, I think a lot of people are going to want. I mean, the first few comments. I think we know what this is supposed to mean. And Shane says, Florida head coach is going to be fired tonight. I think if this was 10 years ago, he probably would be fired.
Yeah.
But with the transfer portal opens up 30 days after your coach is fired, there's no reason to fire a coach in the middle of the year especially with if the candidates you're going after are potentially going to be in the playoff, you're going to get a head start for what?
Yeah, the only thing I think you want to line up hiring kind of what I've heard is like we want to line up the hiring of the GM with the firing of Billy. I think is kind of how I'm reading it in the tea leaves. I'm not an insider. I don't know actually what's going on. But my reading of the tea leaves is we're trying to line up where we can hire a GM and fire Billy and have somebody there who's in a leadership position, maybe a GM, that can talk to the players on the roster, evaluate them, and try and keep the select players that we can keep for a reasonable price, manage the budget in NIL, and get us through the season and get us through the recruiting humps, that playoff type situation. Because we're going to have a lot of things. We're going to have early signing day. We're going to have the transition period. We're going to have national signing day all happen kind of right around the time of somebody who might be actively coaching a team. And that's tough to manage nowadays. It's different than it used to be. It's not just fire your coach, whatever. Like maybe they skip out on their crappy bowl game. Now there's a lot more on the line. If you're hiring a program that's in the college football playoff, they could be playing a long time. So you have to be aware of that. And you also have to be aware of portal deadlines. These are new things. Early signing day, that's a new thing. It's changed a lot. So the timeline's different. And I think it really would make it valuable to have a GM on before or around when you fire Billy. And I don't think Florida has that squared away yet.
No, I do think outside set of eyes on this roster would be very beneficial for whoever's the head coach next. So having somebody come in from the outside, look at the roster and determining, okay, these are the guys that are actual difference makers. These are the guys that can be developed. And these are the guys that can be, don't pay them any money. If they leave, they leave. If they stay, okay, great. Like, I think we
need that. Yes. We need that desperately.
So I think if you, an outside set of eyes doing that with, half season's worth of practices and games would be really beneficial going forward. And I just don't think you want to give the rest of the country, especially if you're the first coach fired, you don't want to give the rest of the country open season on your roster before you have anything else squared away.
That's what it is. As soon as we fire Billy, the roster is open for a month of poaching. Yeah. And that's hard. So you want that window of poaching to overlap with another existing window of poaching, so it's not as bad.
And the portal period has been shrunk, I believe, in December. So it's only 20. I think it's only 20 days in December and 10 days in May now. So you don't have as long. So you'd like to not give your players an extra month.
Yeah,
the big thing is kind of work on the same timelines.
The big thing is the May one still exists, so they were actually talking about getting rid of the spring portal period, which would have basically made it impossible for a new hire for our roster. It's still going to be extremely hard for a new head coach to come in here and flip the roster year one, but it's more likely. So, Seth, I gotta ask film perspective. Let's talk about that because the Florida defense was awesome. Did anything jump out?
Oh, I thought second half it wasn't quite as good, but it's still pretty good. Tennessee did a pretty good job of adjusting to trying to get the ball out on the perimeter quickly. You saw their first drive was a really good job. I thought they would go to some more. I thought you'd see some more of Nico running the ball to try to kind of throw off Florida because it looked like he had some opportunities at times. But I think they have a pretty good plan for with this offense, if you can stop the run early, the run is used to set up everything. They want to continue to. They don't want to get just like everybody. They don't want to get long third downs. They want to be in manageable down and distance, and that coupled with the tempo, they can really get on you when they start running. That's when you see them have really good drives. They're running the ball pretty well, and they can pop a big run a lot of times, get you misaligned. Florida did a really good job, I think, stopping the run early. I wonder how they looked on early downs against the run. So, it looks like Tennessee might have had that's not bad, a pretty decent success in terms of successful runs. But I thought, I thought it was a pretty good play in by Florida's defense. And you saw when they tackled well in the perimeter. I think that's the other thing this offense does is they put you in space a lot. And if you can tackle well on the perimeter, you can slow it down. And you saw, I think Castell missed a tackle on the perimeter, and where it looks like you could have got him in third and long and maybe forced a field goal on the first touchdown drive. They end up getting a third and short, converting, and then scoring right after the first touchdown. So Napier likes to talk about 4-point plays. That was a 4-point play, kind of missing that tackle on the perimeter. And, I thought the defense played well enough to win. If I told you before the game they're going to hold Tennessee to under 5 yards of play, you'd feel pretty good about that.
I thought the defense was phenomenal. Like, that's really hard to go in. They played really well. Tough Tennessee team. And then a lot of guys asked to match up one-on-one who won one-on-one. And it's really hard to lose that game like we did on small things, on the offense not scoring quite as much as they needed to in situations they should have scored on.
Yeah, I mean, you gave away – let's say you hit the field goal. Let's say you only come up with a field goal on the Lagway 4th and 1, and you get the field goal with 11 guys, and then you don't fumble on the inch line, you score a touchdown there. That's 13 points right there.
Yeah.
Going into the second half, you feel much better about that than what you had. So, I think this is kind of a lot of the comments are pretty. First half was an absolute malpractice. It always seems to work out, right? If you don't come away with points when you're on the road as an underdog, you don't take advantage. It comes back to bite you.
Yeah.
CGS says textbook good Napier Gator performance. It had all the hallmarks, all the highs, all the lows, all the third down spacing, slants, calls. It had it all. I do one question.
Yeah.
Do you go for 2?
It's an interesting one. I don't think so. But maybe. Like, it depends on – I don't know how they are, but that is a period where you're on the road. Your defense has played so good. I don't think that's where you lose it. I think the things where you lose it are 12 men on the field.
Yeah. But I thought going for it would have been completely justified. I can understand the thought that, hey, the defense has played really well. Let's give them a chance. But
defense played so good.
If you could go into the game and say, hey, if you convert a 2-point conversion, you win the game, you would take that 100 times out of 100 before the game, right?
I think so.
So I think when it comes down to that, you just be like, hey, you got to go for 2. This, especially with Lagway, an offense not being quite as crisp as it was with Mertz in at times, and kind of being really boom or bust. I think you saw that in some of the Lagway's drives where you had some really big, awesome, explosive plays, and then you had some bust plays. Some of that was play calling, but I think you go for 2, and it's just
a tough road environment.
Yeah, I think if you have a chance to win with one play at the end of the game, you got to take it.
I mean, that's one where I think you could debate it. It's probably never going to – the odds are not going to be 60-40 there. Like, it's all going to be pretty close there.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, fuck. Get 11 guys on the field.
Yeah, that's the easier. It's the easier dilemma would be, could you just get the 11 on the field from the field goal, and you don't have to worry about going for 2.
Like,
and then you'd have a beautiful storied moment in the rivalry. True freshman DJ Lagway throwing a touchdown to beat Tennessee with, a minute left.
I mean, in some ways, I think people could look at this as frustration in the moment. Personally, I'm looking at this as like, okay, well, clearly now Billy is going to get fired at some point. This is another nail in the coffin. He doesn't have to get fired this week. You don't have to fire him this week. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like, he's just not the guy. He doesn't have it. He doesn't have the organization. No matter how many guys he hires, no matter how many mats he has, whatever it is. I thought he called an okay game.
It's all the same warts. Keeps showing up.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that's the one thing you can't abide, really, right? You can abide not everything not being perfect, but when it's continually the same issues and it doesn't get fixed, then that's where you kind of, okay, this has got to get fixed.
If the dude calls another spacing on 4 to 6 yards, I swear to God, like, we have the same play call. Like, he has a whole Benny's menu down there, and
get ready for it.
He's got a couple things he's going to order every time. I think it's at this point he's not it. He's not SEC caliber. He's not Florida caliber. It would have been sweet to ruin some stuff for Tennessee, and he didn't do it. But at this point, let's just move on.
Yeah, and I think that's the bigger picture is that it's – I mean, I think it was already over, but any thoughts of him winning out, saving his job, it's done so, I would imagine. So, which I think it already was. But just I can't imagine – and that's, I guess that's really the disappointing part of this season is you talked about how difficult the schedule was, and then you looked at some of your opportunities actually in these games. It's like you really should have won this game.
Yeah.
And, that's the one that before the season, like, well, that's an automatic loss. It's like, well, for long parts of this game, you dominated it. You should have won it.
Yeah.
And you weren't able to do it. And it was a lot of the detail stuff. And when you're kind of, one of your big things is how detail oriented you are. It's the same issues continually. It's unfortunate because I do like him. I think he's a good dude.
I do too.
It's not. It just sometimes it doesn't work out. I don't think it's obviously not working out. So,
this is more on the, Mush champagne where I like the guy. Seems like he's over his head. Seems like he's had bad coordinator hires. Feels more like Muschamp than Mullen, where it's this guy's entrenched in his own system. He's just never going to get us to the next level. It's not that I don't think Mullen can, or it's not that I don't think Napier can get us to the next level. I don't think Napier's even close. Like, I think I said this in our chat. I think Napier would be a great high school coach. He's really good about getting guys the ball, like Jackson. It was good to see Jackson get some play calls. And that's cool. Like, I'm sure Jackson works hard in practice, but this is the SEC. Like, I need to see one or two guys getting those handoffs.
Yeah.
This isn't. Yeah.
No, I think he's a fine coach. It's just like the SEC is really about thin margins, and it's just not. He does not seem to be a guy that at this point really. And this is kind of what his selling point was coming in. Is like he really wins on the margins and really presses advantages they have on the margins. That has not been the case.
It's so thin. Like
yeah, so
people
like
don't.
it's hard, but when your selling point is, well, we have a plan to win on the margins. We win the fourth quarter, we win this. But when you do that, it's kind of like your big selling point coming in, and then you're still losing on like kind of simple things like having 11 dudes on the field. It's really hard to sell winning on the margins.
Yeah, like I mean, fuck, like get 12 guys on the field in Neyland Stadium with your starting QB hurt, and you win that game. That's a hell of a win. You had it.
I know.
What do you
It's
do?
unfortunate because you had a pretty good plan. That's just you had a good plan. Defense really executed well. Offense at times really executed it well. I mean, you moved the ball up and down the field. You just could not finish. So unfortunate, but it seems like it's a lot of the same stuff we said over and over again.
This is 2 weeks in a row. Florida's played a pretty good run game, both zone and gap. And Florida's defense has stepped up both times and played the run game really well in two really fairly different schemes. Like that has tested individuals. It's tested our play callers.
Yeah.
They've put QB, making QBs uncomfortable, winning 1-on-1 with our DBs. And it sucks that we didn't come out with the W because the defense played so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of young guys on offense play really hard and make some plays. So, that's the unfortunate part. It would have been a really nice stepping stone.
Yeah.
But it just kind of is what it is at this point. So, that's probably it for the post-game show here.
Yeah.
This is if you want to know what the Billy Napier is, here it is. This is it. This is the whole game.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
If you need it all in one, game, you got all the greatest hits here. Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah, that was fucking. I feel like that's on me. I jinxed it in our chat. I was like, man, I feel like Billy's been having a really good feel for the screen calls lately. Like, not quite Sark level, but he's been doing better. And then he calls that bullshit. It's like,
that was a tough
damn
one. All right, we'll be back
Well,
next week with a Kentucky preview, possibly. Kentucky just lost to Vanderbilt, so we were knee deep in storm stuff this week, so we missed it. Seems like Bud may have cut out there, but we'll be back next week. Thank you guys for joining us live here to discuss, the Billy Napier game day and all Billy Napier games, Florida and Tennessee. We'll see you back next week.